penultimate one that I would like to sort of emphasize here is that we need to take a very serious sort of view and do something about the relationship between the public and the private sector within India in terms of us and them being changed to partners and building a trust and building much better dialogue and relationships. And the responsibility for that lies on both sides to achieve national security, because at the moment the way it is, we tend to dissipate our energies between the public and private sector. And finally, what I want to, that I think you would enjoy the fact that we say that in India, for India, its global presence would be that of power of example, and not rather, we go away from the sort of words of hard power and soft power, etc. What we say is that we have had the audacity to take a triple transition simultaneously, the political, the economic, and the social. And we are almost pulling it off, actually, in the sense that, with, what you see, the transformation of the social pyramid, the economic, progress that we have made. I know that we are dualists. There are also very poor people here, etc. And the fact that we have also done the political transition, towards a parliamentary democracy. That model of development, if we succeed, and that's in our understanding still an if, and we don't have to be complacent about it, that would give us the power of example for the rest of the world as we go forward. And that is where would lie also our basic sort of, guarantee of national security, because with this power of example, India would be able to play a role as a global player in the years to come if we do get our act together. And that's another very important thing that we mention here, which is that what can stop India is itself and not its external environment. And so therefore we have to get our house in order, and the time for that is now. Thanks for that.
I invite Mr. Shamsaran.
Thank you very much, Pratap. Since time is short, I'll just limit myself to just a few comments. I think it is important to stress the fact that what we have tried to present in this particular publication is a way of thinking about foreign policy and national security, because these two are interlinked. I think it has been famously said that if you have a goofy foreign policy, then you better have a very good security policy. And I suppose the reverse is true as well. So what we have tried to do here is to, when we are talking about Shankar, when we are talking about strategic consensus, it is not that we are looking for agreement across the board with respect to each and every facet of our external policy or security policy, but at least as far as broad principles are concerned, do we have a certain common view? For example, with respect to what are when we are saying non-alignment to, what are we really trying to convey? That as far as the basic tenet of our policy is concerned, that is seeking as a growing power, as a very large country, as a major power, seeking greater strategic autonomy, seeking a means of ensuring that decisions, as Pratap said, which are vital to our national interests, are not taken elsewhere but are taken here. It can never be an absolute kind of thing, but relatively speaking, try to be as autonomous as possible. And I think that is the sense that one is trying to convey here. The second point I would like to make is that if there is something new in this document, it is to try and highlight the fact that we are living in a world today where the division between domestic and international has become very blurred. And therefore, in a sense, not being engaged with the world is not an option. Because everything that is happening around us in various domains is impacting on our domestic policies. And therefore, the very important objective that we have to locate our foreign and security policies with the goal of the economic and social transformation of India. I think that's the point Shankar also made. that it's extremely important that we orient our policies with respect to that particular objective. Lastly, the point that has been made in the document, that we are today living in a world where dealing with single domains is again no longer possible. That you need to have an approach which is cross-sectoral in character, which is multidisciplinary in character, because virtually each domain impacts on the other. If you're talking about energy security, you have to talk about maritime security as well. If one is talking about non-proliferation, then we have to also talk about regional security. There are so many of these elements that really impinge upon each other. Lastly, I think when a question was raised about the sense of seats, Excellency Governor said, not really my view, but I do feel that we have had a policy in the past where we have felt that we are under siege from our neighbors. Happily today, we have broken out of that. And I think that what we are trying to convey is that if we are somehow able to ensure that India is regarded as an opportunity, not as a threat, as an engine of growth for our neighbors, this is going to enhance the options that we have. And therefore, rather than feeling a sense of siege, in fact, how do we take advantage of the fact that we are no longer under siege? This is, I think, what we are trying to make. And lastly, about hedging, sir. I think when you are faced with an international environment which is transforming so rapidly, where we simply do not know how things are going to work out. Mr. Brajesh Mishra referred to the fact that with respect to what the US policy towards China is going to be, the reason why there is a certain hedging on our part is because precisely that debate in the United States of America has not yet concluded. There are people who are still thinking in terms of some kind of a strategic reassurance with China. We had recently Brzezinski, for example, saying that the role that the United States should be looking at is that of the UK vis-a-vis the European continent in the past, in the 19th century. That we should be the balancing power in Asia. We should be balancing India with China. Now, if that is the kind of trend that we are looking at, I think it is prudent on our part to hedge at least for some more time. Thank you very much for your attention.
Unfortunately, we are under the tyranny of time. What we can do is have a very, very brief set of comments from the floor, and I really would stress the word brief, so that we can perhaps get in 3 or 4 comments, and if any of the panelists would like to sort of have a minute or 2 to respond, we'll end there. So very, very brief. Yes, sir.
So I'm Air Vice Marshal Subramaniam, a serving Air Force officer. And I'd like to offer 2 or 3 quick comments on what I think is a very interestingly liberal articulation of our foreign and strategic policy. Now, so the hawks and the pessimists may look at this kind of an articulation as leaving us a trifle vulnerable to a lot of aggression on multiple fronts due to the numerous fissures and cracks that exist in our environment and our society. But having said, the pragmatists and the realists would counter this by saying that the hawks ignore the big picture, and that being responsible, resilient and restrained is a demonstration of the idea of India, which I think the document looks at. But so the bottom line is that unbridled economic growth is only possible if we have the requisite capabilities to deter, deny, coerce and punish. Strategic autonomy will remain a mere concept till India is prepared to back it with intent and credible hard power that it is prepared to use with extreme care.
Thank you. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
Rajiv Sikri, I just wanted to ask the panel whether they think that 6 years later, the attempt to craft a strategic partnership with the United States on the basis of the nuclear deal was the right approach, and whether it is the opinion of the panel that the quest for an Indo-US strategic partnership was an important factor that led to the deterioration of relations with China post-2005.
Any more questions, comments? Okay, I think you've taken my cue that we are indeed under the tyranny of time, so we will just take those two. If any of the panelists would like to respond briefly, perhaps Mr. Shamsaran, the last question. Or, you are part of the panel as well.
Well, question from Rajiv. I would say that the nuclear deal with the United States was a consequence of the strategic partnership between India and the United States rather than the other way around. So to look at the nuclear deal as something which, in a sense, inaugurated the strategic partnership is simply not true. And I think Mr. Brajesh Mishra did spell out the kind of evolution that the relationship went through for several years before the nuclear deal was actually negotiated. So it is a sense of strategic convergence between the two countries which created the environment, in a sense, for the nuclear deal. As far as the impact on China is concerned, one, I think it is extremely important for us to, or at least certainly that's my view, that our historical experience has been that whenever China has been conscious of the fact that you have other options, that you have a diversified set of relationships with other major powers, that acts as a constraint on China. It certainly makes it more amenable. Another way to look at, for example, the events of 2004-2005 is that the reason why in 2005 I believe we were able to get the very positive political parameters, guiding principles for settling the border issue was precisely because of a sense in China that if they were not going to be amenable, India may in fact move much closer to the US than it would. So I think as far as China is concerned, when you are seen as having more options, when you are seen as having expanded your space, China is more amenable. Even recently you have seen that, because the kind of provocative behavior or somewhat aggressive behavior on the part of China over the last several months, reference was made to it again by Mr. Brajesh Mishra. But if you see, for example, the behavior of China around the time of the SR level talks recently, or you see the change in tone, even the article that has been referred to in the People's Daily. Why has China suddenly started changing tack? It is changing tack because it is conscious of the fact that, perhaps the international environment has turned somewhat negative as far as China is concerned. There is a US pivot in Asia. There is a pressure on China as far as the South China Sea is concerned. I would say on balance, India's geopolitical space has somewhat, relatively speaking, somewhat expanded. That for China has somewhat become restricted. And this sense is further exacerbated by what is happening to its all-weather friend and ally, the Pakistanis. So the experience shows that, in fact, having a good relationship with the United States, in fact, having better diversified relations with other major powers, gives India greater room for maneuver vis-a-vis China, not the other way around.
Okay, we'll just take one last comment from the floor. It's absolutely the last one.
Mine is not a comment, it's just a question. I noticed that in point 30 under China, you use the word agreeable border. What does that imply? What does it mean?
You're in the best position part of our...
I think that's a lazy expression, frankly speaking. I don't think that it was issue of trying to put across the view that it should be an agreeable border, but a border that we could live with, given our strategic requirements and what the ground realities are. But I readily concede, at least on behalf of the authors, that that's a very lazy expression, should not have been used.
Okay, I'm afraid we have to bring these proceedings